Welcome back to Tutorial Tidbits and welcome to my channel. I'm Elizabeth St. Hilaire, and this week I am going to be experimenting with metallic leaf, simple leaf, that stuff that Mona Lisa makes. I've done videos and I've done projects with this in the past, but this week I'm going to do something new. I'm going to try something different that I've never tried before. So let's hope that it works out since I'm filming it as I figure it out. So if you've got a few minutes and you want to experiment with me with a little bit of bling, because honestly, nothing is as shiny as metallic leaf, let's go check it out. So I wanted to add some gold metallic leaf to the background of this Funky Floral that I'm working on. The Funky Florals is my new online and in-person workshop that's been wildly popular and is selling out for 2025. So I thought this would be a great project to demonstrate for you today. So what Funky Florals involves is a bunch of different patterned sections in the background and then flowers that are not necessarily realistic. So you can see in the background here, I stenciled a pattern, and then I've got this kind of wonky stripe and this blue area. So I decided in the blue area that I would like to add some gold metallic leaf, and I think that I would like to add it also in these stripes. So I'm going to be using Speedball Mona Lisa metal leaf adhesive size. This is the proprietary adhesive for the metallic leaf. You're going to give it a shake because it tends to sink to the bottom. And then you're going to have bubbles that you have to deal with a little bit, but you can either shake it and let it settle or shake it and dip your brush way down in there. But you're going to need to make sure that you clean the brush really, really well because all of that will be extremely sticky if you don't. So now I'm just going to take the brush and I'm going to carefully, and I'm using a flat brush by Princeton Velvet Touch so I can cut in with the corners of the brush to the corner areas where I want the leaf to go. So I'm just going to apply a nice thin layer. It's going to be kind of opaque when it goes down, so you can sort of see where you've applied it. And I want to make sure I cover the whole space. And I painted dark blue here, and sometimes I like to apply the leaf in sort of a slightly fractured application so you can see the color from underneath poking through. And sometimes I just apply it solidly, so it's just solid gold. So there's two ways you can do that. And what I think looks the best in terms of colors underneath, if you're going to let that show through, is something dark so that it contrasts with the very light gold or copper or silver metallic leaf. So a dark color. In the Renaissance in Italy, a lot of the times they would put a deep, rich red color underneath the leaf, and then in the cracks and crevices and spaces that deep rich red would show through the gold, and it looks really beautiful. So here I've got that nice thin layer spread, and I'm going to put the lid back on my adhesive real tight so it doesn't dry out. I'm going to go and clean my brush, and I'm going to wait for this to dry to a state where it is clear, but when I touch my finger, it's tacky. So I want it to be completely clear and not wet at all and a tacky touch. So that wait time is going to depend on your environment, whether it's hot and humid where you are, whether it's winter and it's cold where you are, whether you're inside underneath a ceiling fan, whether you're doing it at night in the garage where it's damp and dark. It's all gonna make a difference in the drying time. So there really is no rule of thumb with it. But the test, again, is clear, and when you touch it, it's tacky, but not wet. Okay, so now the adhesive is dry. You can see that it's clear, and when I touch my finger to it, it's a little bit tacky. It should be more tacky. I let it dry too long. If you let it dry too far, it will go beyond tacky and you'll have to reapply it. But hopefully we're going to be okay with this. So I've decided to use copper leaf because it's got sort of a pinkish tone that I think will pick up the flowers and the base color that I have down here. And you want to make sure that you're using simple leaf because simple leaf comes with the transfer papers. If you don't get simple leaf, you ultimately have loose sheets of metallic leaf that are very difficult to manage because they're thin and very fly away. When they're attached to the transfer paper like this, they're much easier to manage. This is sort of like a wax paper sheet.
So we're going to put the transfer paper down into the adhesive, and we're going to burnish it with our tips of our fingernails or a wooden spoon or a credit card to press it into the glue. And if I were to use this, I would get a complete solid coverage, okay? But I wanted to get kind of coverage that allowed the blue to show through. So I'm going to take sheets from previous projects, and this is also the beauty of the transfer sheets, is that you can keep using it until it's all gone off the sheet, and the sheet will keep even a tiny piece like this, which would be very difficult to keep if it were loose leaf. So again, I can't stress enough, you want to get the simple leaf, and I'll give you a link below the video for that. So this way I can put it on in pieces that will give me those spaces in between that'll allow that blue to show. So I'll take these pieces from previous applications in separate sections, and you're going to see that blue showing through. Now, when you're done applying metal leaf, you need to coat it with gloss gel medium so that no other art materials will discolor it. So if you come back over here with some other art material, or, whoops, get that in there like that. Also, varnish can discolor it. So Mona Lisa makes a proprietary sealer that you can also use, but in all of my career with metallic leaf, I have always just put gel medium over it, and gel medium is archival, and I've not had any problem sealing with gloss gel medium, which is the same thing, the same product that I use for my collage glue. So if you don't have that product, then you might want to buy the Mona Lisa proprietary sealer. So you can see that I'm moving around and I'm leaving some blue spaces in here. So, and I can leave as much or little of that as I want. If I think I've got a little bit too much, I'll come back in and just put these little tiny tidbit pieces or the edge of this sort of a wiggly edge right here in there and come around. And you can also, if you don't have previous pieces, I can come here and just do the tip of my finger and a partial and do it that way. So if you rub the whole sheet, the whole solid sheet, and you rub the whole thing, you'll get the solid. But here I'm going for this look that allows me to see the blue through from underneath. And I'm starting with a decent amount of blue showing through. And I may come back in and make it less. But I do like the way that blue shows through. That beautiful dark color with the copper leaf and a little bit of that blue showing through. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a pattern on top of the leaf. So in the past, I have used just this sort of metal leaf with the color showing through. But today I wanted to experiment with adding a stencil pattern similar to this space on top of that one. So I did say that I was going to add gold leaf over in here, and I forgot to add the adhesive. So while we're at it, I'm going to take my brush and in the same manner, add the adhesive into the area exactly where I want it to go. If you overspread your adhesive, your metallic leaf is going to stick into that. So you have to be careful with the brushing. And since the other brush is out in the sink, I'm having to use this one. The filbert is not what I would suggest. I like the flat because you get the nice sharp corners. I don't have sharp corners with this, so I might have a slightly messy application. But the good news is that the black in between the spaces is black gesso. So if I get any over with my metallic leaf, I can come back and fix it with the black gesso, but I don't feel like it needs to be completely perfect either. This is all about imperfection. So, all right, so the next step then is going to be to take a stencil pattern, and I would like to put the same blue that's underneath on top with a pattern on that copper leaf. Okay, so to seal and protect this from other materials, I'm just going to put a layer of golden soft gel gloss, which is the Collage glue, right over the top. A nice thin layer, and I'm going to allow this to dry before I stencil my color on top. So just a nice thin layer of golden soft gel gloss, which is the adhesive that I use for collage. Okay, so now that this adhesive is also to the tacky stage, I'm going to show you how I would apply this straight over without leaving spaces. So I'm going to just take the foil and put the shiny side into the adhesive and then rub with my finger. And then what you can do, which is recommended to get off the excess, if I can get into this box, is to use a very soft bristled brush, because if you rub your finger across the surface of the leaf, you can scratch it. And once you scratch it, those marks just stay and become painfully obvious. So to get rid of the excess, I use a super soft gilding brush, and that way you don't get scratch marks from your fingers. If you don't have the brush, you could use a very super soft paintbrush that you have in your stash that just does not have any paint residue in it, because that can, a little bit of paint left dried in it will create a hard bristle, which will also scratch. So I only use this for gold leaf. That way I'm sure I'm not going to scratch it by rubbing it with my hands or by using a paintbrush that has dried paint in it. So you can see that this is creating a solid, not allowing the underneath color to show through, except for in the areas where I didn't get complete coverage with the adhesive, like right here and right in that corner. I didn't get complete coverage with the adhesive because I was using the round tip brush. So what I can do is I can come in here and add a little bit more adhesive and then apply the gold on top again. Or sometimes I'll come back in with a metallic marker, a gold metallic marker, and if it's the same color as the leaf, I can just sort of do a little touch-up in the corners. But I would suggest that you do as I say, not as I do, and use that flat brush with the corners so you can get a crisp corner rather than the filbert that I used in a pinch. Okay, so that's the basics of how to get the gold leaf in there. And how to get the excess off without scratching. And then remember, we're going to just coat that with the gel medium, the gloss gel medium. So before we get too far ahead of ourselves or before I smudge something else on this, I'm sealing it with the gel medium. Okay. So now I've sealed the copper leaf, and now I'm ready to add the stencil pattern onto the top. I've decided to use the same stencil that I used on the left side so that I can make this a continuous pattern that goes all the way across. So it looks like it changes colors but goes behind the artwork. So I'm going to try and line this up. It's a repeating pattern, so it's not going to be too difficult. I'm going to try and line it up so that it crosses over continuously. So there, I've lined that up. Whoops. And then I have a Scotch Delicate Surface Painter's Tape, and I'm going to use that to fix the stencil in place so that it doesn't shift while I'm applying the paint. And I'm going to push this up a little bit so that I can have stencil that goes beyond, so I don't have to be too precise. So let's move this up a little bit more. And see if I can line this up. Where are we? Here. There. Like that. Okay. Like I said, it's a repeating pattern. So if I line it up on the left side, it's going to be right in alignment as it crosses over to the right. So now I'm going to stick the Delicate Surface Painter's Tape right into the surface of the painting, and I'm going to use a second piece down here. to mask the bottom edge of this. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put that underneath to mask the edge of the painting and along the side of the vase. I'm gonna work my way around the flowers, and I'm not gonna worry too much about them because I will be collaging them. So if a little bit of blue paint gets in there, I will be collaging them. So I'm gonna use the ultramarine blue. That's the same color that is painted underneath there. And I am working on my non-stick craft mat. So I'm just gonna put the paint right out onto the desktop and dab my mini ink blender tool into the paint. Now you could also do this with a makeup sponge, but I do like this tool because I get to dab straight down and I feel like I get a little bit more accurate of a pattern through the stencil with the being able to hold this straight down. But you could certainly try using the makeup sponge or something else you have on hand. Okay, so, and as far as the mini ink blender tool goes, this is a removable Velcro removable sponge. So I wash these out and use them multiple times before I discard them. I rinse them out and keep them clean. But if you don't want to do that, or if one of them gets crusted or they eventually get too dirty, you peel it off and you have replacement sponges. Okay, so I'm going to dab down through here as carefully as possible around the flower. And I have the tape here so I can go over this edge to make sure I get good coverage right into the corners there. Okay, now let's have a look. Sometimes this has to be touched up. Sometimes it's not perfect. See where I pressed excessively? I've got a little extra. So your best friend here is the Q-tip. I mean, I don't need this to be perfect. It's not perfect on that side, but the Q-tip, I can come in and pull some of that extra paint out of this area where it got kind of heavy. I don't even have to be completely accurate in the pattern. I just need to back out some of the heavy blue coverage here. And obviously you need to do this immediately while it's still wet because this is acrylic. So when it dries, it's permanent. And I pull that out a little bit. And I think that looks just fine. So let's see. The focus of this piece is going to be the collage, so I'm not too worried about the background. But the Q-tip will definitely help to pick up some of the extra. But you have to work quickly, because like I said, once this is dry. Okay, so I'm really happy with that. So I'm just going to take off the tape, which does not harm the surface of the paint or the metallic leaf. And then I'm going to take the stencil off at the top. And you're going to want to wash this, or I use biodegradable water wipes so that it doesn't dry by the time I get it to the sink. I can just wipe a lot of the paint off the surface, and then I can wipe the paint off my hands. So I really like the biodegradable water wipes. I get them on Amazon, and I feel like they're a little bit better for the environment than the traditional plastic-based baby wipes. So I'll give you a link for those in case you're interested. All right, so we'll take the tape off, and now I've got 3 stripes of gold plus copper with the stencil pattern to create a really fun background for my Funky Florals collage that's going to go on top. So now the next step for me is to apply collage to this piece in the flowers, in the stems in the vase, in the foreground, in this strip, and down in here. I'll probably leave this painted to be sort of my smooth neutral space. And I've got some fun black outlines on here that I will reinforce on the top of the collage for some mark making at the end. So this is a super fun project. You might consider joining me for an in-person workshop. I will be teaching these all year in various locations. I also do teach it once a year online, and you can always join me on Patreon for tons of content that publishes each and every week.
Well, that's it. Thanks for being here with me. Thanks for figuring it out with me. And I hope you will enjoy the process and experiment with it, have some fun, and we'll see you back here next week.